So we will first start with roll. Please say present or here for the recording, and also a friendly reminder that this meeting is recorded. So we'll start with Commissioner Lynn Anderson.
Yep, here.
Commissioner Rebecca Benoit.
Yes, here. Sorry, I was muted.
Thank you. Commissioner Jim Blake.
Present.
Alternate Destry Bennell.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner April Rose Castillo.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jane Dahl.
Here.
Thanks. Commissioner Sharon Dunham.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Shelley Fagan.
Here.
Commissioner R. Ryan Hendricks.
Present.
Commissioner Shoshana Landsberg.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Sue Pike.
Here.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say she just joined. Yay.
Great. Commissioner Peg Silloway.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Sydney Trimble.
Here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Gina Wilson.
Here.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And so that we can collectively work together on staying really true to our agenda timings, we wanted to ask if one of the commissioners would be willing to serve as the timekeeper for tonight's normal business meeting. Is there anyone who would be willing to help us keep an eye on the clock? Not everyone at once.
I can do that.
Thank you so much, Ryan. We really appreciate it. Okay, so first up is council updates. Do we have council member Laura Mitchell yet? Not yet? Okay. So we will move along and circle back to that when she arrives. Is there any, Beth, did you by chance have an update from her or anything?
No.
Okay. Okay, no problem. So next up on our agenda is public comment. And I see that we have at least one visitor. Beth, is there anyone on the phone by chance on your end? Okay. So we have 5 minutes total for public comment tonight. And I see that we have Carol Tatch. So we invite you to, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and feel free to let us know what brings you to the Beaverton Arts Commission meeting tonight.
Sure, and I'll start with an apology. My computer is telling me I don't have enough data for my camera to work.
Oh, no worries. No problem at all.
When it starts working, I will do that. My name is Carol Tatch. I am the Director of Philanthropic Innovation at the Regional Arts and Culture Council. And this is one of our advocacy outreaches and opportunities to engage with community-wide arts folks, including arts councils throughout the region.
Yeah, I just admitted Mario Mesquita as well from RAC.
Well, Carol, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. And it looks, yeah, as Beth just mentioned, one of your colleagues, Mario Mesquita, just joined. Mario, we are in our public comment section of our agenda. So we're welcoming visitors. And if you'd like to quickly introduce yourself to the group and just let us know what brings you to our meeting tonight, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. I am Mario Mesquita. I am the manager of advocacy and engagement at RAC. So I work very closely with Carol and here to see about how we can best support each other and moving forward with what types of partnerships or collaborations we can work with.
And does everyone know what RAC is? Is there anyone that doesn't know what RAC is? Okay, good. I figured y'all would, but just wanted to make sure.
Well, Carol or Mario, would you mind just giving us a brief summary of RAC's role in the area, just so that we make sure we're all on the same page?
Certainly. RAC has been operating as a nonprofit in the Portland metro area for the past 26 years. And prior to that, for about 20 years, we were actually a part of the city and for their arts, community engagement and integration. As a nonprofit, we continue to have several contracts with the city as well as intergovernmental agreements for surrounding counties. Our work runs the gamut from grant making to we house and maintain the City of Portland's public art collection. We engage with community partners in Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington County for arts engagement and creativity. We have a workplace giving program that allows us to have funds that go through us back out to organizations in the community. We have a wonderful advocacy program that Mario now leads here at the organization. We have, let's see, I said grants, public arts, the opportunity. We also are a fundraising organization so that we can raise more funds to give more money out to the community. We have leadership programs where we invite folks to have additional professional development along both nonprofit margins of creating, of removing barriers, to also specifically for artists if you want to have your own business. We have accounting workshops, just different ways that we try to make sure to not only make ourselves accessible to the community, but that the community has the skills and materials that it needs to do its best work in arts and culture.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for laying that out for us. We really appreciate it.
Can I give a shout out?
Please do.
George Thorne.
Absolutely.
Yes,
He's our best resource.
I got a grant to have him do 12 sessions for Nonprofit Gallery. And he is just amazing. He's been great.
Well, Carol and Mario, thank you so much for joining us. And we all look forward to continuing the conversation and learning more about how we can collaborate between our groups moving forward so that we can advocate for a really flourishing arts ecosystem here in our region and beyond. So thank you very much. All right, so next on our agenda are approvals of the minutes from our last meeting, March 10th, 2021. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review those. Are there any changes or items for discussion before we move into approving those? No? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Jim. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you so much, Sharon. The minutes from March 10th, 2021 are approved. And a huge thank you to Commissioner April Castillo for her work in producing those for us. We really appreciate it. So thank you so much. All right, moving right along. Next on our agenda are staff liaison updates from our staff liaison, Beth Toby, who's our arts program manager. Take it away, Beth.
Yeah, so I have a few updates from the city. There was a What's Happening on 5th Street event with the new mayor, Lacey Beatty, that was held at the beginning of the month. If you're interested in learning about it, it covered fountain renovation at City Park, the senior affordable housing project, and book corner prospects, all on 5th Avenue. You can go to beaverton.org.gov/5th Street projects to watch a recording of that, and I'm more than happy to send that out if people want me to send a link out. The city manager recruitment, the search for the city administrative lead who will report to city council on the operation, services, and programs continues. A community survey is live through mid-April to gather public input on key initiatives and desired qualities to guide hiring. Learn more at beavertonoregon.gov/city manager. The city's shelter has extended its services through the end of May. This is the severe weather shelter. If you have any questions about that, you can go to www.co.washington.org/homeless. And then there will be a spring voters forum. So you can hear from the candidates running for city council position number 1 and Tualatin Hills Parks and Recreation District directors in the May 18th special election. The Beaverton Committee for Community Involvement, BCCI, will host the live virtual event on Thursday, April 29th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. And I will make sure that I send out a link and a reminder about that for all of you. That's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Beth.
I have a question. I'm curious, in the arts program, did Courtney leave or Carly?
No,
No? Okay.
no.
Just in one of your emails, it said something about if you have any questions, ask me or Debbie or Carly or.
Oh,
Darcy or
okay,
something.
yeah. So Carly is our facilitator for tonight.
Oh,
Debbie
okay.
was the one helping me with the distribution of packets, but Courtney is still with us, and I even have her in my PowerPoint for later.
Oh, good, great. Thank you. I was worried. I didn't get to say goodbye. Thank you.
All right, any other questions before we move forward? And also an update, and Beth, maybe you want to add to this. Everyone's noticed that our bylaws vote is not on tonight's meeting, and it's very likely it will appear on our May meeting. So just to give everyone a heads up on that. Beth, did you have any other information you'd like to add there?
Nope, just stay tuned for May.
All right, thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda is the Beaverton Downtown Association, and we have a big welcome to Kevin Teeter, who's the executive director, and his colleague Zachary Metler, and they will be presenting the Beaverton Downtown Association's Sidewalk Mural project to us, and they are requesting approval to move forward from the Beaverton Arts Commission. So I will turn it over to Kevin. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison, and thank you, fellow commissioners, for welcoming us here tonight. We are super excited about this project and having the opportunity to share some of these details with you all and invite you into this process that the community has been really excited about for a little while now. I'm going to have Zachary walk you all through our plans and kind of what we're hoping for from you all tonight. It's a pretty brief presentation, so it won't take very long, but we welcome questions and comments afterwards. Zachary is a master's student in the Urban and Regional Planning program at Portland State, and he's been a huge source of support for us over the past 9 months or a year or so. So Zachary, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, folks. I'm going to do a quick screen share for the presentation and make sure that I'm clicking the right window. So get this set up. So do people see a pretty simple slide? Okay,
Yep.
Great. So yeah, pretty simple presentation. We're talking about some of the sidewalk murals that we're hoping to get put on First Street outside the dining commons. So a really simple map kind of showing where the 6 ideal locations for these sidewalk murals will be. 2 in front of Lionheart, 1 in front of NAC 1 in front of Kiowa Sushi, 1 in front of Sandy Dental Clinic, and 1 in front of, I'm actually completely spacing on the name of the business there, but for those are the 6 kind of located positions on First Street. And then kind of the bulk of that being, this is the art that's been generated from all that work that's been done the last few months. So these are pieces of art that have been produced from different artists that we've worked with and done commissions for. And so these would be kind of the images that would be put on the sidewalk. We've gotten the funding secured, and this has been a lot of work working with Razier over at 2D4D. And all of those maintenance agreements are ready and signed. And we're just coming here to kind of talk about this and have some final conversations around it before moving forward on it.
I'll add just a couple details. Thank you, Zachary. These murals are about 4 feet by 8 feet. So they'll cover about 2 sidewalk squares per mural. And these 2 designs on the right, they were the first renderings that the artist had done. He has a color palette that kind of flows pretty well with these other murals to the other side too. So they'll be very colorful. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this or clarifications? that you all would like.
Is the title of the project At Home in the Northwest, or is there not a title?
I would not say that it's a specific title. I think when we were doing the initial commissions and going around a theme, we were focusing pretty heavily on Pacific Northwest in general. And just as far as orienting the slide, a lot of these were designed landscape, and that one was oriented portrait, just because of the way that the art was made.
Is this the final art, or is this some ideas of what's being proposed?
I would say the ones that are more kind of fleshed out with color, those are more accurate to what the final design would be. And then the ones that are more pen and ink on paper, just depending on how the art is able to get put on the sidewalk and the color palette, those, these are all to flow a little bit depending on how easy it is to transfer this from computer or pen to sidewalk.
And is there any request for input on these? And in addition to that, on the left hand side, the second one in the middle, I'm not quite sure what that is.
Yeah, so the second one on the middle, it's as if you're kind of doing a cross section of a forest looking up towards the sky. So that's like the bottom of trees, looking at like the tree trunks, looking up at the tree canopy and the blue sky. And then as far as the comment input part, I think Kevin might be able to answer that more appropriately than I probably could.
Yeah, so these designs are fairly final. Again, like Zachary said, they might change a little bit based off of how the sidewalk actually is when they're installing it. So it's not so much that we're looking for major changes to the design, although if you all have considerations that we should share with the artist, then certainly share those. But these are the main concepts that we're moving forward with.
I have a question about, will there be any signage to explain what these are?
So we had not planned for any signage. It's just meant to be a fun design piece of art that people can enjoy when they're out there at the dining commons area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll also add from a use perspective, something I remembered is the middle one is also intended to kind of act as a hopscotch as well on the sidewalk.
Cool.
Who are the artists?
Oh yes, that would be good for us to mention. So Emily Lux is a teacher at Beaverton High School and a local muralist. She did the bottom left. Susan Charnquist did the cross section of the trees. Brittany Resch, she's also another local muralist, did the top left and also the middle one. And then somebody named Kiyomoto, and I'm not remembering his last name, but I can find it out and I can put it in the chat before Zachary and I leave.
And the ones on my computer on the right that are still kind of the renderings that haven't been colored yet, are you taking both of those? I mean, they look kind of similar to me. I see a difference in it, but or are both of them being considered?
Both of them. And when we were given a color palette with them, so we have a general idea of the colors that are going to go alongside those. And part of that process when we were kind of honing in on the final murals was we went around to, we walked into all the different businesses and kind of asked folks, which ones would you want most in front of your business? And that's kind of where we decided to place them on the sidewalk. That kind of came out of each business telling us which ones they liked the most.
And how did you come about the quote from John Muir, and why John Muir?
So this was actually one of the biggest changes that was made throughout this process. It was initially a Native American proverb, and we talked about it more and more, and we were like, oh, we don't know if that's like cultural appropriation, but it felt like it was too close to that line. So we reached back out to the artist and we asked her, like, hey, can you submit another quote that can act as an alternative while we figure out what we want to do with this. But we still would love the quote to focus on the value of nature and this idea of exploration and appreciation for our environment. And so she chose this quote from John Muir, and we felt like it was a good adjustment based off of the feedback that we had received of the first quote.
What are the backgrounds then of the artist? Because if you're concerned about it being appropriation, I'm assuming that she's white, or at least not of Native American descent. Are the artists sorry, are the artists from a diverse range of backgrounds?
So let's see, Susan, Emily, and Brittany are all white. And then Kiyomoto is Asian, although I don't know his ethnicity.
Kevin or Zachary, how long will they last on the sidewalks?
Yeah.
I remember too many different numbers. Kevin, if you remember the right one.
Yeah. So when we were planning this out, our vision was always for something shorter term. So about a year or so.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
When we've been talking about it with the artists and the neighboring businesses, what we've come to is the paint on the ground will last like 2 years or so, depending on the amount of foot traffic and the wear and tear of just being outside. So if they get chipped and damaged, and if it's too much for people to fix, then we're just going to power wash them away so that we don't have art that's not being maintained. So at minimum, a year would be great. If it goes longer than that, that's kind of bonus time in my mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could just add real briefly, we've been talking with Kevin and the city attorney, and from the city side, from our perspective, we are happy to sign a 3-year contract, but there is a clause in there that says if it gets degraded or vandalized in a way that it is irreparable, that we may ask the Downtown Business Association to remove them.
I wonder if it would be something, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you're sort of in final phases here, but I wonder if it would be something to consider to perhaps have a quote from a Northwest artist, author, creative. I know, there's lots of Northwest people. The first person that comes to mind is Ursula Le Guin, but there are plenty of others. Just to keeping on that theme, with kind of Northwest nature and so forth? Or is it too far along? I'm responding to, I'm just going to be straightforward. I'm responding to far more than he seeks.
Yep.
Which is exclusive to me.
Yeah. No, those are great points. I would be perfectly happy reaching out to the artist and seeing if they have quotes from somebody local that they and the business owner who will be neighboring this space would be open to changing it to. Or maybe.
Do you know which business it is that it is going to be in front of?
Yes, let me see. Zachary, can you go to that map? Okay, so this is Brittany Resch. So it's the middle bottom one. So that's Koya Sushi right there at the bottom middle.
Be really cool to have like a quote from maybe like a local Japanese, I mean, sushi is usually Japanese. It'd be kind of neat to go that direction where they're like, it's tied in with the actual business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone who's someone who lives or lived in the Northwest. Just an idea. I'm just throwing it out.
Yeah, I'd be happy to check with the artist and the business owner. It might be something that both of them are actually really excited about. So I'm happy to check. I can't make any promises though.
Kevin, I'd like to, since I'm always interested in education personally, and I know you said you weren't planning any interpretive signage or anything with this, will you feature them on your website for the time that they're, that so if people did have questions, they'd be able to look somewhere to get information about the artist and or what the art is about?
Yeah, so our plan was to share it out on our newsletter and social media. We actually hadn't talked about having it on a website page. That'd be something that's pretty simple to do though. So
yeah, and to that point, this is Beth. I would add that we'd be more than happy to also feature the murals on our city website and make it clear that it's a partner project and that the Downtown Business Association spearheaded this and credits all of the artists and everything.
yeah.
Kevin,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Kevin, would you consider doing some kind of signage in the dining commons, like on a kiosk of some sort? Because I don't know that people would go to a website necessarily unless there's a QR, and I don't even know that they would do it then. But if there was something that was right there in front of you, and we could take it up in the BDA design or BDA economic vitality subcommittees to have something present when you're actually viewing the artwork.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And it would be pretty easy for us to throw a quick design on an 8.5 by 11 layout so that we can post it up on the walls of the tents there. There's already some signage up there about like safe dining regulations and things like that. And we could probably just put something right next to those.
It's a point of order. We're over time on this agenda point, but we have time available if council member updates aren't happening. And then just a recommendation, since you were talking about maintaining the art from a contractor guy, an anti-graffiti clear coat would help you. So maintain those for a year. So.
I had two quick thoughts, Kevin, if you don't mind. On that first one, I mean, I really like the designs on all of them. On the first one, another local poet to consider would be Bill Stafford. He's actually in like Oswego, but he's local enough, right? Yeah. And I object a little bit to the stump in there, I mean, it's like, couldn't you put a bird on it or something like that? But
I agree with you about the stump. I didn't say anything because I thought I was already saying something, but
yeah,
I agree.
I don't know. It's just like, that just hurts my heart. But I love that second one and the third one. The other ones are awesome, but those are my only thoughts.
Thank you. That point's well taken.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for your comments, and also a big thank you to Ryan for helping keep us on track. And if there's no other questions or comments for Kevin and Zachary at this time, Kevin, you are looking for a green light from us to proceed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes. So Beth, do we need a formal motion for this, since
that would be great.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that the Beaverton Arts Commission gives the green light to the Beaverton Downtown Association to move forward with this project.
Second.
Thank you, Ryan. All those in favor, please do a visual thumbs up for us. Okay, and is there anyone opposed?
I just have one question. Will we see another round of designs, or is this all we'll see until it's on the ground?
This will be the last time that we come before Arts Commission, but I'm happy to share updates with Beth and Allison for them to share with you all too.
Kevin, I had one question. How did you go about letting people know this was an opportunity, and how did you go about choosing the artists that you did?
We had reached out to 2D40 and Razier Rishan as the director of that organization. Given that 2D40 has a great wealth of access to local artists in the area, we asked Razier if she could head that up and pick a crew of people who she felt like could do a really good job with this.
How many people responded to you that they were interested?
I'm not sure. Oh, there's Rosier.
Yeah. Where are you? Oh, there you are, Rosier. Hi.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. Yeah. How many people were interested in doing the murals on the sidewalk?
What we did, because there was an urgency to spending these funds, and this was kind of started last fall, is we reached out to artists that we already knew were capable of doing work on the ground. We're visual artists, and then we also reached out to other networks from like Apano and from some other Native American artists out actually in Eastern Oregon, who gave us the name of one of the artists that shared her design work. So not an exact number. It was very much more about like specific targeted outreach because at the time there was a time restraint.
Well, thank you everyone for your comments, and thank you again to Kevin and Zachary for presenting this. We are super excited to get some paint on the ground, and I think all art additions to Beaverton is a move in the right direction. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Good job.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, so I think, and Beth, have you heard anything in the meantime from Councilmember Laura Mitchell? Okay, so before we conclude the regular business portion of tonight's meeting, did anyone have any very quick arts-related announcements that they would like to make before we segue into our retreat portion?
I have a quick announcement. We're hosting the Gathering of the Guilds this year virtually. We usually are at the convention center and pull in about 15,000 people, but because of COVID, we're going to do April 30th, May 1st and 2nd. It's going to be online. It's going to be 251 artists in 6 different guilds, and that includes glass, beads, pottery, wood, fiber, and I'm missing something, creative metal arts. So check us out on Gathering of the Guilds. We want to drive people in that direction because usually online shows are less than optimal. So check us out, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. And Jane.
Sharon, could you put that in the chat? There was some background noise and it was very hard to hear you. So if you have a link that you could put in the chat, that would be great. Thank you.
Could I do a quick plug then too?
Please, please.
A Friday, April 23rd is the parentheses Arts Advocacy Day. So if you're interested also in maybe talking and supporting the different legislative decisions that are being made on our Capitol, Friday the 23rd is a great place to start that. You can also check out I always forget the actual name, CAC, Coalition, Cultural Advocacy Coalition's website to sign up there as well.
Great. Thank you, Mario. And Mario, if you also have any links or information you'd like to add to our chat box so that we can all take notes, that please feel free to do so. Great. All right. Are there any other quick announcements before we move on?
I did have a question. Beth, did we do anything about the back of the tea house mural? I know it was kind of having problems. I haven't really looked at it lately, but
yeah. So after looking into it, we don't have an agreement in place with the property owner, nor do we have the borrow waiver. And so we sort of felt like it'd be easier to just let it be for now. Mm-hmm. But I can talk to you more about it offline. It's a sensitive issue. So mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Gina. So if there are no other announcements, this concludes the normal business portion of our meeting. We will now segue into our board retreat. And a big thank you to our visitors, Mario and Carol. It was really great to see you. And also to Razier, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And we look forward to continuing all of these conversations.
Wonderful. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So I hope everyone's got comfy pants on. And without further ado, we will move straight on into retreat part 1. I would like to extend a huge warm welcome to our facilitator this evening, Carly Adams. She is also with the City of Beaverton in the Center for Mediation and Dialogue, and she has very graciously, she's graciously joining us as our facilitator to help us flow through seamlessly this agenda, and she will also help us keep on time. So huge welcome to Carly. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison, and thanks everybody. It's good to see folks again. This is actually the 3rd time that I've facilitated for the arts team. I realized I was like going back and looking at the notes. So always a lot of fun to work with you. And this is a little bit unique, and it's that this retreat is divided up into 2 sessions, which is, so tonight, as folks saw, as you all saw on the agenda, there's a little bit more emphasis on some information being shared tonight, with Alexis and Lanny both sharing a little bit about some foundational pieces, and then Beth as well, and a couple, and I think Shelley's also speaking tonight. So tonight's going to be a little bit more about the sharing and learning in that way, and then the part 2 will have more emphasis on the now where do we go from here, and the brainstorming focus. So just kind of laying out so you have that in your mind, that this is going to be just one part of a larger conversation. I just wanted to, I'm kind of watching the agenda here. I just wanted to say a couple of things about my role, and also sort of how I think about facilitation. My hope is that I'm here to, encourage everybody to share and to speak up, and if there's quieter voices, to encourage some of the quieter voices to be able to ask questions and to share as well. And that's a little bit more challenging sometimes on Zoom, and I understand that, but that's kind of one of the things that I see as my role as a facilitator. And then also, like Allison said, keeping track of the time and the agenda. And then I think the most important thing is that I anticipate that you'll probably have some things, that ideas that are shared, and some, outstanding questions that don't get resolved, and some things that you identify as future topics that you want to dive deeper into. And so I'm going to track that as you're talking about it. So that's the other thing that I think that I see as my role. And then I'm certainly open if there's something else that's needed. So that's a little bit about my role here. Even though I do work for the city, I'm not coming in the city capacity. My role is coming in as a facilitator. So I'm not here to speak on the behalf of my program or anything like that. So just to be clear that in this capacity, I'm here as the facilitator for the whole group, if that's helpful to everybody. And I want to share my screen for just a second. And for the sake of time, since there's not, once I get the right one up here, since there's not really a lot of time right at the moment to have what I would love to spend the time with you all around, really like thinking about how do we have this conversation and what are the agreements that we want to come up with. But for the sake of time, I took the liberty of just writing down a few facilitator suggestions for group agreements. And then I just wanted to share them with you all about what I find to be helpful when we're sharing together in this brainstorming way. So I'm going to share my screen for just a second and explain these four. So now hopefully you are all seeing something that says, oh, now I can't see all of you. I'm using 3 screens tonight. That's kind of, can somebody unmute and see my screen?
We have a black screen right now, so we're not seeing what you're presenting. Oh, now
I'm gonna stop that for a second. For some reason, it froze my screen when I tried to share that. I'm going to read these. There's only 4. I'm just going to read them to you. So some 4 agreements that I think is helpful. The first one is step up, step back. And so this is the idea of, if you've been, if you're sharing, share your piece, but then take a step back. And similarly, if you tend to be more reserved, then hopefully you feel that you have the courage to be able to step up and say your piece or your question or your opinion. The second one that I'll suggest is to lead with curiosity and an open mind, but especially in the second session in May, when we start to really sort of share ideas and brainstorm things, is to lead with that curiosity in mind. If somebody says something that is different than how you experience it. The third one I'll say is the one diva, one mic idea, which is basically the idea that if you have the mic, then it's your turn to speak. And so we'll just let people finish their thoughts one at a time. And the fourth and final thing that I think is to expect non-closure. So as we're having these conversations, you're not going to be able to make all of the decisions and resolve everything in one session. There's just a lot to cover tonight and then even the next in May. So some things won't get closed. We'll try to make some progress though and help you feel like you have a plan for going forward. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to add? And does that work for everyone? Just by show of hands, and you're welcome to add anything if you feel like there's anything else that you wanted to add. I think I'm seeing most hands. Okay. I think I saw everybody's hand, although I'm trying to watch the whole screen, make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay, so that's my little overview of where we're going. And now I'm gonna really just step back and invite the things on the agenda to go, and then there's some questions in there that'll help just sort of guide along. Some of the stuff that I shared tonight is really going to carry over into the May brainstorming session. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shelley. Well, I should say one thing. Is there any questions that anybody wanted to raise before we move on?
I just wanted to thank you for the pipe cleaners again. I really like the pipe cleaners,
yes,
especially
you're welcome.
the sparkly ones this time. It's really good. Yes.
You're welcome. So I will say, oh yes, I forgot to say that in the gift bags I wanted to include pipe cleaners because this 2 hours is a long time to sit here and to engage in conversation on the front of the computer. So those are just fidget toys for you to have something to do with your hand. We'll show off what you've created if you've made something by the end of this. So hopefully that will help make this a fun conversation. So
you're welcome, I ate my marshmallows before they went into the hot chocolate.
Karen's already created some art. That's really impressive. I love it. So awesome. Okay, with all of that being said, Shelley, you're up next on the agenda to kind of go over a little bit on the history.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I was asked to give a 10-minute history of the Beaverton Arts Commission tonight, but I couldn't find much history beyond in the earlier years than when I served. So I thought what I would do is share what my favorite times and I can tell you what the past board was like as compared to today. I know the board, I think, was started in 1983. So when I first joined the Beaverton Arts Commission back in January of 2012, I wasn't sure what to expect. The format of the board meetings were a little different than we have today. Like now, city staff informed us of arts events that were happening and we filled the volunteer time slots as needed. But we had to go over every penny of the budget at every meeting and it was not fun. We also had to go out and find sponsors for our events and take promotional materials to businesses unlike any other city board and commission at that time. A Beaverton Foundation member would sit on our board and keep us updated with what the foundation was doing. Today, we are so fortunate that we don't have to find sponsors for our city events anymore. Our city puts our events in the city budget and we don't spend our precious time at our meetings talking about every penny. Yay! We also used to have a juried show called Showcase that took 50% of the commission from the artist if they sold a piece at the show. The city was paying musicians at the time and dancers to perform, but taking money from the artists. The more current Beaverton Arts Commission decided that the showcase was a little too stuffy and that we needed to shake things up a bit to create a more inviting art show experience. We worked together to come up with the name BAM, Beaverton Arts Mix, which is now live, or the call to the artists is live right now. And the city no longer takes any commission if the artist sells a piece in the show. They keep 100%, and that's amazing. From time to time, some of the art commissioners have been asked to serve on different advisory boards for projects that the city is working on. Those are completely separate meetings in which art commissioners are representing the board. Sometimes they are very time-consuming, but so important to be shaping the thoughts around the arts here in Beaverton. I was asked to serve on an advisory board for the South Plaza of the Round shortly after City Hall moved into the Beaverton building. The advisory board was made up of some city staff, city engineer, some representatives of an adjacent building in the plaza, the manager from the Round, and myself. It was very exciting to be a part of something that would be here for many years to come, essentially history in the making. 3 different architectural firms showed us their projects that they had done in different cities and places and gave us their proposals for the South Plaza in Beaverton. We worked hard as a group to pick the architectural group that would do the design. Then the chosen architectural group had to present us with some options for the plaza. Since I'd been on the board for a few years then, I knew this plaza would be used for event and vendor space, such as for the night market or for concerts in the Round, which happened on the other half of the plaza at that time. One of the architectural firm ideas were tall cypress trees and benches placed around the South Plaza. Being a spatially talented virtual artist, I didn't think that was right for the plaza, so I asked them to map it out for me in the actual plaza. So they brought blue tape and borrowed arborvitae's trees from a nursery and put it together. Former Mayor Doyle came out to see it, and he didn't like how much of the plaza it took up either, so we were on to the next idea. So the next idea included shade sails, and they had poles that went in different directions, and they had fabric on these. So these were would be placed right in front of the light rail station. And because it rains so much here, I envisioned water just shooting into people's faces as they were rushing to get from the light rail to their the parking garage. I didn't think that was a great idea either. So I asked the architects how much it would cost to replace those shade sails, well, to install them and to have replacement shade sails every 3 to 5 years. So they gave me a number of about $40,000. So I thought to myself, that would be a healthy commission for a landmark art piece for any, for a beautiful city like ours. So I took that information to the city's arts and events manager at that time, Janie Scott, and she thought it was a great idea too. So next, the advisory board was given the opportunity to select an artist for the South Plaza sculpture. A call to the artist went out for the sculpture, and we voted from the selected group of artists that responded. So now it sits in front of our city hall, is 3 Creeks, 1 Will, the sculpture by Devin Lawrence Field. And so the reason why I'm telling you this is because you can see now how important that your time and energy is to the arts and culture and growth of our city. You're not just here to fill a volunteer time slot or check a box. So bring your passion, your ideas and energy to the table. We are here to represent the collective voices of our community to help create a more vibrant and inclusive arts community in Beaverton. Thank you.
Kelly, thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Appreciate the history there, that kind of your experience.
What was that?
I said just thank you for sharing. Appreciate hearing those experiences. If anybody wants to make a quick comment, you can. Otherwise, we'll.
Yeah, I can speak for Shelley and Becca and myself, who went back to the day where she was talking about where we would sit around and spend 15 minutes looking over accounting spreadsheets, which isn't not exciting for Arts Commission to do. So count yourself blessed that that's all behind us.
Well, thanks so much. Rebecca, were you going to say something?
No, just amen to that. Just having to think about the money all the time was just awful. And we're just so blessed. I mean, it's so unusual to sit on a board and commission that you're not expected to be a fundraiser yourself or go out and look for money. And we are really, really blessed with this city council and this Mayor Doyle, of course, and I'm sure Lacey Beatty now that they're so committed to the arts that they give us money to spend. Yeah. Who doesn't like to be given money to spend? It's great. So yeah, definitely.
Great. Well, thanks so much. That's helpful, and hopefully that's helpful to the new members as well. So we'll just keep cruising along. I saw Alexis. I saw you're there. For those of you that don't know Alexis, I'll let her introduce herself. But Alexis runs the Cultural Inclusion Program and Social Services programs at the city. I'll let you add more about what you do, Alexis, but now you're up. There's wanting to hear from you. And I think, do you have a PowerPoint? Let me know if you're having any trouble sharing that. I don't know if you have a PowerPoint.
I do have a PowerPoint, yes. And I think I'm ready to both speak and share this on my screen. Okay. Hi, everyone. Really nice to be with you here tonight. As Carly said, I'm Alexis Ball. I'm the Equity and Inclusion Manager with the city, and I use she, her pronouns. I oversee the Cultural Inclusion and Community Services programs in what was formerly the Mayor's Office and is now the Community Services, City Services Department. Still getting used to that part. And so I'm here to talk with you all tonight about a few different topics around our diversity, equity, and inclusion work at the city. As you have on your agenda, I have sort of three main areas of content that were asked for. And so I think what I'll do is I will go ahead and share my screen and go through the way that we talked about it when we were preparing for this. What I was thinking is hoping to sort of weave in conversation as we go or as you all are comfortable or want to. So what I'm thinking about doing is sort of sharing one of those three pieces, pausing and seeing if there's conversation or discussion, moving on to the next piece, and then doing that and sort of pausing between each of those three. And if that flow works well, great. If that doesn't work and you want me to finish my part and discuss later, that's fine too. But again, thanks for the invitation to be here and for your interest in this topic and making it a foundational part of your retreat and the beginning of your work this year. It's not, I have been with the commission before, but it's been a few years. So just to recognize that you all have had a continued interest in this topic, and everyone involved in it appreciates that. So is my screen coming up okay? Cool, see some thumbs up. All right. So the three topics that we talked about were one, giving sort of an overview of the city's diversity, equity, and inclusion work and goals. The second one was to talk a little bit about what is an equity lens and what does it mean to use an equity lens. And then the third one was to talk a little bit about the Diversity Advisory Board and their focus for this year. And so I should have mentioned at the beginning that I am the staff liaison to the Diversity Advisory Board and have been for about the last 7 years. So the majority of the time that they've been together. And that is an incredible honor. And they are very much drivers of this work. So And then we had some questions that we brainstormed that are at the bottom of the screen there. And those are really, I think, more than, I can certainly offer a perspective, but I think more than for me to answer those are questions for us as a group to ponder as we're listening to this information and responding. So the first thing I want to share with you is that we have a brand new equity statement that's being worked on and finalized and dispersed to staff as a city. And this is a brief version of it. There's a longer version as well, but this is probably the most concise statement of the city's commitment to the work. So I'll just read that briefly. The City of Beaverton is committed to supporting a culture of accountability, equity, and inclusion for all, especially for marginalized groups. We pledge to continue the ongoing, difficult, and essential work needed to address institutional racism and historical inequities in all forms. So as I said, there's this briefer version and then there's a longer version as well that explains a bit more context and history and sort of how we see this applying to the City of Beaverton. But this work, one thing to say about this is this work is absolutely, continues to evolve very much. So this is a statement that our internal equity team and department directors have been working on for the last however long, so that the city has a statement to point to and to base our work in, to reference it. What you probably are more familiar with in our work has been our long-term, more externally facing work, which it takes the form of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan for the city. And so this is a plan that was originated with the Diversity Advisory Board, and they are still the primary authors of the plan. And it sort of encompasses the majority of the goals and objectives that the city has around diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And so there was a version written in 2014 that came out in 2015, and then we redid the plan with the Diversity Advisory Board in 2019. It was adopted in 2019 to begin being implemented. And so you all received a little quick guide, which is kind of like a cheat sheet short version of the plan. If you want to see the whole plan itself, if you haven't already, it is available on the Diversity Advisory Board website. So that quick guide, the full plan, and then also one of the things that my team and me do each year is to pull together an annual report on the city's progress around those goals and objectives. And so we just did our first one on this new version of the plan, and that's the 2020 annual report. So you can see that report on that site as well. And we also presented to Council last December 8th of 2020. So there's a very brief presentation about it if you're interested in really the weeds of it. But I would say, in the briefest form, these are the priority areas that are contained in the plan. And so there are somewhere 120 some indicators in the plan, but they're separated into 6 different categories. So there's tons of work that could be done around diversity, equity, inclusion in the city. But when we boil it down into these community-led priorities, we see work around public engagement, city practices, housing and livability, public safety, economic empowerment, and community building and inclusion as being the sort of buckets of the goals and objectives that rise to the top right now. So these did shift a little bit from the initial plan in 2014, partly because we made some great progress in some of the different areas. So for example, in the first plan, language access was a really important, a really key area. And that's no longer, not that it's no longer a priority, but we were able to build some infrastructure and make some big strides in that area. And so in this 2019 version, that piece was removed as one of those top areas, and other things took its place. There's lots of other examples as well. So you will see in this plan, as you see on that quick guide, there are several places where the arts sort of directly and most obviously are spelled out in the plan, particularly under the community building and inclusion area, I would say. But certainly I think there's application under public engagement as well. And I'm curious where you all see your work as well. That was one of the exercises, or has been one of the exercises around this plan, is to talk about it in different spaces and ask people to see, well, where do you see your work helping us to fulfill these goals that have been set out? So that gives you a little sense of those sort of overarching documents and kind of some of the themes that we're working with as priorities. And again, mostly from the community. One of the programs that I oversee at the city is a cultural inclusion program. So I just wanted to give you a brief sketch of the work that we do. We're sort of the holders of the drivers of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And our mission as a program is to support the city as a whole to become more welcoming and inclusive and representative and responsive, particularly to historically underrepresented and underserved communities. And so we work, our target populations with cultural inclusion are communities of color and immigrants and refugees. And so a lot of the programs that we run are specifically target those populations. And so you can see some of those different areas of work, and you all received a sort of a map of the program. But so this also gives you a sense of some of the priorities for the city around this work. So language access is there, but also building channels for leadership development and civic engagement for these populations that are you know, an important and active part of our city, but maybe not as connected to City Hall as other populations for lots of reasons historically, and other, you know, lots of barriers. So we have some leadership development and public engagement efforts. We have a Welcoming Cities initiative that is really focused around being a welcoming community and supporting immigrant integration, building relationships across cultures between folks who've been living in the community for years and years and newcomers, among other things. And then we do some internal organizational development work so that we are a city that is ready to, prepared to engage with diverse communities internally. And my team supports Diversity Advisory Board and Human Rights Commissions. So again, gives you kind of a sense of some of the work that the city has decided to prioritize. So I think with that, I will pause for a second and see if there are questions or comments or anything around sort of the overview of the city's focus around DEI work.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Do we know what the population of people of color, immigrants, and refugees are in the area?
So one statistic that or a couple statistics that you'll hear us say frequently are that 1 in 3 folks in the city of Beaverton identifies as a person of color, and 1 in 5 people are somebody that was born outside of the U.S. So it was an immigrant or refugee background. And then of course there's much more specific data than that, but that gives you a sense of the size of the population. We also know that in terms of English language learners, I believe the percentage is over 20% as well that use that use a language other than English in the home. It doesn't necessarily mean, those are two different statistics actually, English language learners and folks that use multiple languages at home, but so it's a very high percentage.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
And Alexis, confirm if I'm right. As far as we know, Beaverton is actually the most diverse city in Oregon, correct?
It is. It's one of the most diverse. It's a little bit. It's a little bit of a tricky thing because you could measure that in lots of different ways, right? Beaverton, I think, is diverse within our diversity, right? So you can look at, for example, the percentage of folks of color in Hillsborough is probably higher, but it's largely Latinx, not solely, but when you slice the pie, you see a lot more pieces of the pie in Beaverton than you do in practically anywhere else. But it depends how you measure it. Over 100 languages spoken in Beaverton School District homes is another way to look at that.
One
Awesome.
of the things that I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Sharon.
Well, one of the things that I'm kind of hearing from Kevin's presentation and yours too, is that we are really ripe for collaboration between the DAD, between the Beaverton Downtown Association, and really kind of getting more involved in sort of the process of decision making. They heard really loud and clear some of the discussion from the design elements and things like that we can do more more proactively And I think that this is wonderful groundwork, wonderful foundation for us to build upon.
Thanks for that. Yeah, it is absolutely one of Beaverton's strengths and something that we are known for in the region. It's great to be in a place and in a city where people recognize that as a strength, and to build off of that, and to recognize when we're missing some of those voices, and how do we work on that piece and understand some of the history of that as well, right? Which is the next,
silos.
Which is part of the next piece that I was going to talk about. Yeah, absolutely.
So, question for you.
Yeah.
Under community building and inclusion, I was reading some of our packet information. There's this statement that says acknowledge diversity in public spaces. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, sure. So those pieces have to do, so one of the things that preempted the renewal of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan was the release of this really important research study called Leading with Race, Research Justice in Washington County. So if folks aren't familiar with that, that's something to definitely take a look at. It was a comprehensive study that was done by the Coalition of Communities of Color, and we were one of the entities that sat on a steering committee to help the study happen in Washington County. But it records the lived experiences of, as well as quantitative statistical data around the experience of communities of color in the county. And one of the things that came out of that as a theme was the fact that these communities don't see themselves, we don't see ourselves reflected in public spaces. We don't see, so one piece of that the Diversity Advisory Board grabbed onto was around place naming, right? So thinking about how do we name our streets, our monuments, our parks, et cetera, and how do those reflect or currently largely do not reflect the diversity of the populations that have built this county, except, in addition to some of the landholding families and some of the other politicians and bigger names like that. How do we also reflect the diversity of folks who were farm workers and who were railroad builders and who built this county in many different ways and contributed at a community level, and that's not something that's seen currently. And so as much as folks would like to see, that history isn't reflected. And so there's this sort of discourse around like, oh, communities of color are new to Washington County. And that was something that through the study, people really pushed back on and said, no, that's not really true. People have, families have been here for generations, but that history isn't talked about. It's not in the narratives, the dominant narrative when we talk about the history of the area or in place naming and things like that. So a lot of work to do around more comprehensive history.
Wonderful, thank you.
Alexis, did you want to make a brief comment about the history project that you guys are working on?
Sure, I can. Yeah, we started a project maybe about a year ago called the People's History of Beaverton. Currently, we need to work on that as well, but that's the way it's framed right now. We're partnering with Five Oaks Museum, who you all may be familiar with for their downtown exhibit, their traveling exhibit. This is Kalapuyan Land. And they used to be the Washington County Museum, but they are now the Five Oaks Museum. And the idea of the People's History Project is really to discover some of this history and rewrite that narrative a bit and highlight some of these important community contributors that come from different communities. So really, it's framed around creating an anti-racist history of Beaverton, also taking some self-reflection as a city around what policies and practices in local government, as well as kind of the reflection of federal and state regulations at different times, created largely segregated neighborhoods at different periods of time, and even to today, and other dynamics like that. And so we're really excited to think about holding up and increasing the depth of our historical narrative. And one thing that Five Oaks is doing for this first phase of the project is to gather and create some biographical narratives of 30 different folks who have contributed both historically and currently. And we hope that grows into some community engagement pieces to also gather some history that just isn't documented yet. and also hopefully grows into potentially what you all could help us dream about, right? Some sort of exhibits or, public education materials. One piece that they did that's sort of similar off these themes is the Tigard Outdoor Museum. So I don't know if anybody is familiar with that, but the Five Oaks group did that. That's a walking outdoor museum that highlights diverse folks who contributed to the history of Washington County and Tigard. And so sort of have dreams of some of these pieces, as well as just informing decision makers about, the broader picture, broader historical context of the decisions that folks are making today around development and things. So yeah, so more to come on that. Excited about that, and definitely see some crossover with you all on what that looks like as we bring the community in and present to the community.
How does the LGBTQ plus population fit into the narrative around diversity and inclusion in what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Cultural Inclusion Program and the Diversity Advisory Board, their existence was a response to a recognition that specifically there was a divide between communities of color and the city. And so this work is very much rooted in principles of racial equity primarily. But when you talk about equity and when you talk about diversity, you're not talking only about race, right? You're talking about how are we different people of different identities coexisting and trying to build a community that is inclusive and works for everyone, helps advance our collective success. So certainly we do have that focus in this work, and intentionally out of the demographics and out of the history and out of the recognition of that gap. But the board also, the Diversity Advisory Board and the work that we do also at every opportunity that we have will also promote inclusion for other groups, whether it be based on sexual orientation or gender identity or any ability, etc.
Alexis, do we still work with Michael Wong at all as far as I know he was the Beaverton Historical yada yada. I'm drawing a blank, but it was do we work with him at all? Yes, thank you.
I don't believe that we do anymore. We did in past years, and some of their history has been really important to what we know about the city and an important repository. I believe that they, yeah, I'm not sure where they are as an organization currently.
I don't either, and I didn't know if it was an ability to tap into something that already kind of existed or may still, or expand upon. I don't know.
I think they have a role in some of the information that they've gathered. I think that Five Oaks, or formerly the Washington County Museum, I think has even more than a local entity like that. But absolutely, I mean, I think there are many more partners that have this information. That's one thing we've learned. Actually, we had an intern last year, and she had some really interesting connections locally to Beaverton High School and a project that they had done on gathering local history. And through a church faith community, we gathered some more information around housing covenants in the past. And so this information is definitely not all collected yet. So I think I look forward to a time in which we can invite community to help us gather some of the pieces that we're missing too. So yeah, it's a good point.
It's almost like there's, like we do call to artists, is almost like call to historians.
Yeah, I could see that.
Alexis, I had a question. So I know that the DEI has been something that is ongoing and y'all have been working on, but this isn't specific to the Arts Commission, when we have recruitment for boards in general, is there guidelines for the board's recruitment that specifically talks about that, like trying to diversify who's on our boards in order to get their input?
Do you mean for boards and commissions as a whole?
Yes. The boards and
recruitment for the city as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Lanny's here tonight, and so she can, that's her shop, so I'll let her mostly talk about it, but I'll just say that I think that they have been really great partners in her team, both in encouraging that, in doing, you know, training for city staff liaisons, in, you know, being creative and trying to figure out as many different channels to market the opportunities to in the community. And also in tracking our data, which is a really important piece, right? So they have this really great dashboard of who are on boards and commissions, who's applying to them, where are we seeing the diversity that that is reflected in our population or not, and thus what kind of outreach decisions can we make based on that. So I think there has been some work around that, and there's also some real challenges in certain communities, right, that have historically not a good relationship with city government for really valid reasons, or some fear around that, right? And so that's this bigger piece that we all have to do in order to support the moment at which we are inviting people to do something like come onto a board or commission. So it's kind of, you know, multifold. But yeah, and then the other piece is we do this leadership program through our program, and we partner with a community-based organization, and the leadership program is called the BOLD program. It's specifically for communities of color and immigrants and refugees, and so we heavily promote to that group of leaders to also try to, you know, have a captive audience of folks that we're also inviting onto all boards, not just the diversity advisory board, but trying to invite people onto all of the boards.
Yeah, I mean, that's my.
I'm sorry, I just because we're on that subject real quickly. We used to do that. You know, back when I was chair, we went and spoke to BOLD to try to recruit, and a volunteer fair to try to reach out and do that. So the efforts are there. I mean, we just got to continue to pursue them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I just looking at the statistics that you say here, that 1 in 3 persons in Beaverton is a person of color, and then I look at our board and I look at other boards and I'm like, where is the representation? Where is it? And I understand that it could be difficult, but I think a lot more work needs to be done to really get a diversity of voices in and show that those that we want that diversity of opinion. We're not, you know, we're not an exclusive club here that's making decisions on high. So that's the thing I really would hope to see at some point, especially, and I'm not talking about a quota or anything like that. What I'm talking about specifically though, is that it's a citywide mandate or, you know, that it's not just, you know, not just one board that happens to have someone who's really seen through a diversity lens, an equity lens, that it's all the boards that are always seeing that and always looking to you know, to make sure there's different voices at the table.
Well said. Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder, Alexis, if, you know, what makes me feel comfortable, you know, is not what makes the others feel comfortable, and how can we understand what it is that would encourage others to come, you know, what is stumbling?
Yeah, these are all really great questions, and I do want to just introduce this topic of an equity lens tool to use, because the questions you all are asking are totally the types of questions that you ask when you use an equity tool, and I think you know, just to say that this is a process, right? It's work that we all absolutely all have to contribute to, right? And folks need to see themselves reflected in these spaces, and we need to make these spaces more flexible, and we need to ask the question about what's the barrier and what would make folks more comfortable, and we need to be willing to break down some of our status quo of this is the way we've always done it, and so that's the way we're going to do it, kind of things, which are challenging, especially in a government institution, right? Something that has a lot of structure. But so let me just go ahead and share the screen on a couple of different slides around an equity lens. And I don't know, you all maybe, I imagine there's usually when I present on this, there are varying levels of familiarity with this topic. So I'll just spend a minute talking about what is an equity lens. What does it mean to use an equity lens? there are lots of different tools that can be used, but essentially an equity lens is both a product and a process, right? It's a series, in its most basic sense, it's a series of questions that you can ask yourself at a critical moment where you're making a key decision around policy or practice or budgets, et cetera, that helps you question, in a basic sense, what are sort of the impacts of this decision on different communities, right? Who's going to be benefited disproportionately or burdened disproportionately by this decision? And if we find that that exists, how are we going to mitigate that, right? How are we going to try to promote inclusion and equity in all of the decisions that we make? And thus, how are we going to take ourselves through a process to be really intentional about that? So there's different tools. And what I mean by tools is essentially like, a list of questions or a worksheet that you fill out, a process that you go through as you're considering a big decision. So this could be something that you all use when you're thinking about priorities for the year, when you're thinking about whether to support or fund, X project versus the other project, or, who to partner with or whatever are really key decisions for you all. So as it says on the slide, it really asks you to spell out what's your proposal, what are your desired results and outcomes, right? What are you really asking? What do you really think is going to happen and want to happen, so that you can have that to measure by, right? Looking at some data. So what does data tell us? So if we're talking about representation in a particular neighborhood, maybe we look at neighborhood demographics, maybe we look at, data that comes from the school, the local school, or whatever it is, whatever data is relevant to your particular decision, or your population or your geographic area or whatever. But really sinking into that data, that can be challenging. Sometimes we have that data, sometimes we don't, and we need to collect it. Thinking about what communities have been engaged and how they've been engaged in supporting the process of making that decision. And you all are community, but even within your own structure, right? How are you consulting with community, particularly when you don't have the representation on the board itself to know how something's going to impact a particular community that you're trying to target. So how are we engaging impacted communities in the decision? Who again is going to be benefited or burdened by a given decision? So if we invest in this part of the city, where are we not investing, right? Or whichever piece whatever that looks in your work. What are your key strategies for advancing equity? So what are you trying to do? What are we trying to do differently to promote access to opportunity and success of all communities, including ones that don't historically do as well in X, Y, and Z area, or aren't as well represented? And then how do you ensure accountability and communicate back to the community and evaluate your results and make sure that you've actually reached your desired results and outcomes, or not, and what do we do about that? So so those are kind of some key pieces of it. There's a couple of different, let's see if it advances. There's a couple of different tools that I shared with you all. There's really long worksheets, right? That will take you through a really intricate sort of detailed process and all of these pieces. And then there's some really simple ones that you can use, and there's everything in between. So I shared two examples with you of well, they're both actually, or the one is explicitly a racial equity tool. The other one is just sort of framed as equity in general. But one of them, so these two tools are things that are being used at the city right now. We are experimenting with different tools. One is the Beaverton City Library, which just simply created a wallet card that fits in there. We all carry badges on our lanyards or on our waist. And so it's a wallet-sized card that they carry around with them. That's just called Equity Every Day, and it asks 3 critical questions. So they said, when I'm about to make a decision that's going to impact the community, whose voice is and isn't represented in this decision? Who does this decision benefit or burden? And what does this decision close or widen access gaps? And so that's a really simple 3-question version of using a tool, but of using an equity tool. But the idea there is that ideally we're doing this as a process. You're doing some reflection yourself, or ideally you're doing it as a group, and to be able to really sink into those questions and then choose, make a decision based on that. The other example that I shared with you is they're calling the 3 threes, and this is something that was developed by an intern in our community development department this year, and they're still sort of honing. But they base it around this idea of make sure that in different steps in your process, you are stopping to ask some critical questions and reevaluate what decision you've made. And again, ask some of those questions. So sometimes we get so wrapped up in our planning process or our timeline that we just we roll forward, right? So this is asking us to stop and reflect at some key decision points, and also to challenge the status quo in some specific ways. So you'll see that in the tool if you haven't already, in the tool that I shared ahead of time. But it's another example of a set of questions. The Beaverton School District uses one that frames their equity questions around partnership, people, place, and practice. And so there are different ways to ask these questions, but the goal is to make sure that you're intentionally creating checkpoints at which you're thinking about who maybe isn't represented here, or who is going to be impacted in a way that may not be our intention, but it will be the result of a particular policy decision, and what can we do intentionally to interrupt that. So I'm going to pause there for some questions or comments around using an equity lens tool. And Beth, I know you have
Alexis,
a lot of experience with using these at different places. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had another question. So I moved here from Texas several years ago, and in Texas, I worked in state and local government. And one of the things that we often did, and I don't know, I'm pretty sure with a law, was that we had to purchase a certain percentage of products and services from historically underutilized businesses. Is that the same thing in Oregon? I apologize that I don't know this. And if so, do we do that with Beaverton, and are there other ways that we could use that kind of as an example of ways in order to diversify who we're supporting in our community?
Thank you. That is a great example. Yes, we do have here in Oregon, it's called a COBID. It's the State Office of Business Diversity. I'm forgetting all of the whole acronym, but it's minority owned, women owned, emerging small businesses, service disabled, veteran owned businesses can get a certification through the state to say this is the type of business I am. And then government entities in particular have policies that make sure that those businesses are considered in the process of purchasing goods. So the city of Beaverton has a policy like that that we developed a handful of years ago, and some goals around percentage of utilization of those businesses. So it doesn't mean that it 100% stipulates you have to use X business for something, but it means that they must be considered in the process. So you must invite, if you're doing an RFP or an RFQ and you're asking for proposals from businesses, you must make sure that you have solicited bids from businesses that have this certification. So that's kind of how that system works. But I think that's a really great example in terms of thinking about, where do we spend our dollars? And does that reflect the diversity of our community, of our business community?
Yeah, and it's not just that you have to solicit from those people. There's actual percentages tied to it. You're expected to spend a certain amount of your budget on those historically underutilized businesses. It's in the law. So I'm just wondering, you said that we're expected to put it out to them and invite them, but is it part of the law that we're supposed to spend a certain amount on those businesses? And if not, maybe that's something that needs to be examined at some point, because people talk with their money. Whoever you decide to support with your money, those are the people that are going to be getting the help. And it's like, if you're not I don't want to say forcing, if you're not encouraging people, if people won't do it willingly, maybe it needs to be legislated. That's my 2 cents.
Totally. Unfortunately, we are not there yet. So City of Beaverton's policy is more based around you must consider. There are some additional points that are given in the process of evaluating. So you can earn some more points towards winning a bid when somebody's evaluating you. But we do not yet have a requirement of percentage of utilization. I wish that we did. I think that's the next step.
I'm just going to pause, and I see Ryan's hand there. Alexis, and I think you have one more section that you wanted. Did you have one more thing, or was that the end of the slides?
It's just to tell you a second about what Diversity Advisory Board is up to. But these two pieces were important. So if there are other questions.
I think Ryan had a question. I just wanted to kind of time check because there's just a few more minutes and then for the sake of time. So I think Ryan had a question.
Thanks.
Hey, Ryan, hit unmute.
Sorry, my hotkey isn't working for some reason. It's really to support that point. I think that's a really valid point about where we're spending our money in FWESB funds and contracts. First of all, Texas also has a really great law that in education, for every dollar they spend on sports, they have to spend the same amount of dollars in arts, which I think is great. That's a sidebar. But how well did we do in Beaverton on the Performing Arts Center when we built that? It being a major art project, how did we perform in soliciting MWESB contractors?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have that off the top of my head, but we could ask that, the utilization percentage, and I could get back to you. I believe that it was higher. The city has currently a goal of 10% of all procured items, value of procured items, be with MWESB certified firms. And then we've been setting some project specific goals. So I believe with PRCA, they set a project specific goal that was higher than that. It should be higher than that. So I don't want to guess at the percentage, but I know that it was higher than that, and I can ask for that. It's a great question.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're considering it in our train of thought. And just to follow up on that, you said something very specific in there about them being a certified MWESB person. I do a lot of construction. That's my background. That's what I do. In my kind of experience, a lot of MWESB people aren't certified because of the process that it goes through. Us thinking about how to reach out to people that may not be certified but fit the bill, is a good idea. Anyways, just wanted to throw that in there. It's a huge topic, and I can't agree more that we speak with our money. So
absolutely, yep. We create these structures to try to support, right? And sometimes we end up creating more barriers or some additional significant barriers. And the certification process is free, but it's not easy. So yeah, so I know that we're just about out of time. So let me just share, and you all saw, I shared a document with you initially around the Diversity Advisory Board's goals and priority areas this year. So I won't say too much about this, but and this is actually an old 1-year-old photo, so excuse that. But there are 3, they choose priority areas each year, and this year they chose business development and recovery, support for vulnerable populations, and housing. So those are sort of the core areas that they are organizing around. They are, of course, also organizing around the Beaverton Night Market, which we are planning on hosting in person this summer. We are just finalizing the basic details for that, but we're really excited to be able to do that with COVID protocols in place, of course. We're going to be hosting at a new location in downtown Beaverton, and we are going to be overlapping and collaborating with the Chalk Art Festival. So we're actually also really excited about that. We've just been talking with Razier in the last week or so about how to do that best, but I think that's going to be a really exciting overlap as well. So mark your calendars for August 13th and 14th, and please help us spread the word. We're opening this week vendor applications for the market. But yeah, those are some of the areas that you'll see, and you will see under the goals that there is a definite goal from the Diversity Advisory Board to collaborate with other city boards and entities. So there is openness, there is desire, there just is sometimes, and in particular in a virtual world, challenges around that. But please know that if you all have a concept or an idea, they are wanting to do that.
Alexis, are you allowed to say where that's going to be? Because I know that Kevin put out a call to, do we want to do Friday, Saturday, or do we want to do Saturday, Sunday? And the main, I guess the thrust of it was Friday, Saturday, which I don't know if that's what it fell on.
It is, yes, that's what we heard back. That was really helpful outreach. Yes, we are planning on a site that's on, runs along First Street between Hall and Betts, and up Tucker from Farmington up to almost Second Street. So a little cross there around, if you know where Jan's bookstore is, that's right on the corner.
Okay.
And
yes.
Columbia Bank, so that's the,
Got it.
that's the area. We just
Thank
haven't
you.
figured out how to describe that concisely yet.
It's on my birthday.
Will there be less vendors this year due to the COVID?
It will be more spread out, and we will have ticketed limited entry. So it'll feel a little bit different, but we're hoping to have a good chunk of vendors because we have a lot of space.
Okay, great.
Very cool.
Well, thank you all so much. I know that time is up and you have a packed agenda, but always invitation to have me back or send questions or figure out how we can collaborate more.
Real quick on my end here, one is a comment and then a real quick question. The comment being, yeah, there's a lot of questions that are being asked of diversity. So it'll be great to see a little bit of feedback on the things that have worked and have not worked. You learn from successes and failures. And these questions have been around for a while. So, you know, it'd be great to see, you know, the focus. I know there's not going to be, you know, something that's going to be the answer to all of it, but it'd be good to see how, you know, the things that have actually worked and some of the things that may not have. But and my question is, okay, the reimagining the night market, moving it, but as far as the diversity goes, what are they taught? Is there something in a plan to make it more diverse, or?
In terms of what does reimagine the night market mean on that goals list?
I think that's part of the diversity. So I was wondering, what are they reimagining it for that's going to make it to appeal to more diversity?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's particularly around that point. I think we've had great success in that sense, in mobilizing the community and getting some incredible representation at those markets along with the vendors. Although there's always communities that haven't been represented yet. So the reimagining is more around, okay, last year we were in a virtual format. Now we're moving back to in-person. We're in the middle of COVID. We have a new location. So it's just, again, sort of thinking about what does that look like and feel like this year. And also moving forward, there's always been sort of a desire to think about the night market as something that may not live with the city forever. Maybe it could have its own life outside of the city. So there's always sort of conversations brewing around that too. What does the future look like?
Thanks, Alexis. Thanks so much for sharing all that information. Appreciate it. Maybe everybody can just like unmute for a second and say thank you. I always think it's nice when we have.
Thank
you.
You are
Very
awesome.
interesting.
A great
Very
retreat.
interesting.
Thank
Thanks for what you bring.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
Thanks,
Important
Alexis.
work.
Thanks everybody for doing that. That's one of the hard parts with the Zoom. So I think that we need a break, and let's take 5 minutes, about 4 minutes, and I'll start playing a callback song for you all, so you can just listen in and hear a song so you know it's time. So 7:45. So take a break, and I'll be back.
I'm glad we had a break. I had had a 16-ounce Diet Coke right before the meeting, which was not a good idea. Oh, you got your mug. Yay.
Cheers, everybody.
I love the swag. Whoever picked out the swag did a great job.
We're all gonna have to bring these to when we get back together again for a meeting. So you got to show up with your cup.
Right.
The credit on the swag definitely goes to Carly and Debbie, for sure.
All right. Well, thank you, Carly and Debbie.
Yes.
Of course, we can't chink these when we toast each other. They don't really chink very well, but that's all right. They hold a lot of liquid.
Yeah.
Good.
And nobody can see what color it is either.
That's right. There's that.
I realized I had some iced tea in a cup, and I'm like, are they going to think this is beer? Because it's clear.
That's okay, Destry. We're known as the Fun Commission. That's our, right? Everybody? Yeah.
I remember hearing that.
Because I joined. I know.
That's the only reason you joined.
Well,
No, it's fun because I joined.
Oh, right.
Once we got rid of accounting and spreadsheets, it became fun.
Yeah. Really, I know. It's true.
Oh, welcome back. Oh, hope we got a little stretch in between. 5 minutes is not a very long break, but feel free to stand up and stretch if you need to in between, because I know that it's hard to sit there. Thanks, everyone. I imagine that you also probably will still have outstanding questions and further conversation related to everything that Alexis just shared. So I think that holding on to those thoughts and questions as they come in. And then I jotted down a couple that folks mentioned that didn't get answered, or that were ideas for moving forward. So next, I think we have Lanny is here. She's going to talk about all of the role, the purpose, and the different various pieces here. So I'll let you talk a little bit more, Lanny, and introduce yourself from the neighborhood corners. Thanks, Lanny.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's great to see all of you. And I guess tonight I'm just really excited to share a little bit about, I'm Lanny for the Neighborhood of Public Involvement Program. Actually, is that the sound issue at my end? Are you hearing that?
Yeah, I am hearing a lot of background, but it looks like everyone's muted, so I don't know.
It wasn't like that earlier, but I'm
I always hear this from Beth.
That's great. Okay.
It's in Beth's world.
There's no dishes being done in my house, so it should be clean.
Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Lanny. I'm with the Neighborhood and Public Involvement Program, and we do coordinate the boards and commissions program. And so tonight I thought it would just be helpful for me to talk a little bit about some nuts and bolts, and also share some details about some of the inside happenings that happen inside City Hall that can help you just have better knowledge about how we do our processes, so that you can think about that when you're putting your ideas into action. And so with that, I thought I would just, I'm going to share my PowerPoint, and feel free to just ask questions along the way as well.
And let me just, I didn't say as a reminder, but if you're not somebody who likes to speak up, I know we have only heard from about half of the folks, and you want to just write your question in the chat, then that's fine. You write your question in the chat and we'll make sure it gets asked as well. So either way.
Okay, can you see that okay? Great. All right. So the first thing I just wanted to start off with is the best starting place as you're having this conversation about how to be an effective board and commission is to take a look at your bylaws. It's your governing document, and it really details your purpose and your duties and really what you're all about. And as you know, you get to update that as often as you like to make it really be pertinent and timely. And you'll be having a new draft coming your way from the city attorney's office. She is reviewing your current draft, and you'll have that at your next board meeting. And so with that, I just pulled the language from your current bylaws, and you have a great overview of really how you want to be positioned to be that voice for the arts. And so I always say, take a look at that as your starting point. And then the next area that people always ask about is, tell me about the difference between a decision-making and an advisory board. And the simplest answer is that decision-making boards make decisions on behalf of the mayor and city council, whereas advisory boards, they are advising the mayor, city council, and city staff. And most of our boards are advisory boards. So planning commission is the only decision-making board at the city. And with that, I just want to say that our advisory boards have been incredibly impactful throughout the years in terms of the different policies and programs and touch that they've had, not only in City Hall, but how it's been implemented throughout the community. And then the other item that I get asked a lot too is, well, okay, I'm an advisory board. I'm an advisory board member. How can I be effective? And so we do a lot of research. We go to a lot of conferences. We meet with jurisdictions, and we always talk about what are the best practices. And I highlighted a few themes that constantly come up. And so it's nothing very sexy, but it is, I would say it's tried and true, and we've seen it be really effective over the years. And so I just want to share a few of these things that most of the things you probably already know, but I just want to highlight a little bit and maybe some context of things to consider. And so again, like the first part is being just very knowledgeable of your board, being familiar with your mission, your purpose, how are you relevant in the community, what are the past and future issues, and what are any other details that have been around for the years. And so for you new board members, you know, just getting to talk to the board members that have been around, they have that history. And like Shelley shared, things have really changed since 2012. But, you know, that's helpful to know where have you come from, so where you're headed. And then the other component is to just, you know, carve out some time to study what are the needs of the community. You were appointed to be on this board through a very competitive process. You're viewed as the eyes and ears of the community for the arts. And so City Council really, they look to you for being those eyes and ears and giving that feedback loop. And so for you to take that time to study and hear what others are saying is super helpful throughout the process. And then the other question that comes up a lot is what can your board do that no one else is doing, or what's currently missing in the city? You know, giving that some thought to that question. Some great ideas have come out of just that brainstorming question alone. And then the next piece is collaboration. I think we can all talk about, you know, bandwidth is definitely a precious commodity. And so what groups can you currently partner with, align with, to really maximize what you want to accomplish? And, you know, it sounds like from your board meeting earlier, you're already talking with the BDA, but definitely cross-pollinating with other city boards. The city has 11 neighborhood association committees that are actively looking for ways to partner. And then you've got other agencies such as the Tualatin Hills Parks and Rec District, the Beaverton School District, and other community-based groups. So just, you know, maybe having conversations with them. What are their ideas? What are their needs? And is there any alignment on what you might want to accomplish together? Because not only will it save on resources, but you can be so much more effective when you're tag teaming in multiple groups. And then the last item is what trends are out there, what ideas are happening in other jurisdictions, what conferences are out there. I also just want to mention that we do have funds available. If you see a conference that is going to give you some valuable insight, the neighborhood office, we carve out some funding every year for board training. And so if you see something and it's not in your staff liaison's budget, that's something that Beth can talk to us about, because we realize that, just going to another conference with some of your colleagues in other jurisdictions can really help trigger some great ideas. And even just starting that conversation is just a great catalyst. And when I was talking to Allison, Jane, and Beth about what is the back already doing, I have to say I was really surprised about all the different things you already do, because for an advisory board, you already have so many buckets that you're regularly being actively touching for the city. Just your arts grants alone, your 1% for the art, the murals, and how you are involved with volunteering at city events, representing the back on other committees. Those are things that really are huge impact. And I just wanted to, just say that that's a great thing to celebrate, and know that a lot of advisory boards may have a little tad of jealousy if they were to see some of this list. The other piece that maybe you could consider doing more of is having a presence in all of our existing newsletters. The city has the Your City, the cultural inclusion newsletter goes out monthly, the neighborhood newsletter, we actually send that out every Friday. And then of course our social media tools. And so those are all things that when you do have an idea that you want to get the word out for, you can definitely have your voice be elevated throughout those channels. And then the last piece is your annual reports to council. You can have a lot of fun with that. Council loves to hear from you. This is the feedback loop that they would prefer to hear from you at least once a year for an annual report. It doesn't have to be formal or stuffy. It could be creative. You guys by far have one of the best logos, let's face it. You're very creative. You could do a video, you could, just don't limit yourself on what that looks like. And you can highlight what have you been working on? What do you want to do in the future? But definitely use that as one of your tools to get in front of city council and share what your vision is and what you're hearing from the community and what gaps you see. That's starting to build that base for where you want to head with your board ideas. And then I wanted to just mention a few other things that are that just to keep in mind. The city is going through a major change with the charter change. So we, as you know, we were a strong form mayor government. Now we're transitioning in our having a city manager now. And so we have Kurt Wilson, he's our interim city manager, and we're actually now getting ready to interview for the new person that will be in this summer. And so, it's a lot of change, not only for city staff, but for city council and the mayor. And I put a few bullets here about just what are some of the things that the city manager oversees, but for the most part, think of it as the daily overseeing of the government and then proposing the budget and also overseeing staff. Those are some of the key functions. And then we also have a new mayor, and she's also navigating in this new role of, what does this look like under the new charter? In not being a strong form of mayor government. So that process is underway. And then of course, with city council, we have, 2 new city councilors, and we're going to have a third one. May 18th, we'll have Mayor Beatty's, her vacant council position will be on the ballot. And so we'll have another city councilor coming in. And if you tune in at any given council meeting, you'll hear council discussing like what their vision is, what they want to achieve. They're looking at ways to be more efficient with their council agendas, how they communicate. And what does that really mean for you? Just know that there's a lot of processes being improved, reviewed, and definitely at that level, but also it kind of trickles down to staff as we know our processes are changing too, of what do they need from us. And I did include this chart here, just shows that all the boards and commissions report directly to, because they're advising to City Council, with the exception of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board. That's the one that is an ad hoc committee that reports just directly to the mayor. And that's how it was before the charter change as well. And then this chart is in your binder because I know it's too tiny to view on the screen, but what I wanted you to take away from this is that this is what used to be the mayor's office department. We're now called the City Services Department, our organization chart. And this is where, Alexis, Carly, Beth, and I, we're all housed in the public engagement division, and we report to CC Ritter. She's our division manager, and CC reports to Abigail Elder, and then Abigail would of course report then to the city manager. So that's some of our internal chain of command of what processes we go through. And again, not much changed other than the name of our department. So for now, we're City Services Department, and we may change that name. We're kind of trying it out for size. It was really hard to come up with a name. And I think where I wanted to kind of spend some more time on is the demystifying all the different processes that your board and you as a board member will either utilize or want to consider touching, and things to consider about that. So the first one, the City Council, going to them, you can do proclamations, you can do your annual presentations. You can also have a consistent voice on going through the visitor comment period portion of a City Council meeting. If there's topics you want to chime in on, or if there's just something that's timely that you want to just get out, like if you want to do an announcement of something that's happening, of arts happening in the community, feel free to go make an announcement. First of all, they'd love to hear from you, and they like to see that you're bringing that lens to them, and then as well to the communities. So definitely keep that on your list of something to consider at all times. And then the city budget. The city budget is kind of, because I don't believe, because I think this, Laura Mitchell will talk about this, but just want to give you a little bit of a highlight of what the process looks like and so if you come up with an idea or you want to do something that has a financial component to it, just know that we operate in a fiscal year, which is starts in July and goes through June. And so what that really means in terms of our timeline as city staff, the city staff starts submitting, drafting our budgets in the fall, and then we send that to our department head at the end of the year, and then it gets formally submitted to finance in January. And so any back requests would go through Beth, and Beth would put that in her program budget. And then what happens after it gets formally submitted to finance in January, that's just the beginning. We then have an internal review process in March. And at that point, then the committee starts evaluating, does there need to be any more cuts or any questions, and some additional changes may happen at that point. And then another document, a prepared budget, is then drafted and sent to the budget committee in May. And then after the budget committee's reviewed it and they make their recommendation to City Council to formally adopt in June. And then the funds are available July 1st. So you can kind of see, like, if you have an idea in March of this year, or April, we're in April now, so April right now, you'd actually have to go through the process to get it in, to Beth in the fall, and then it would work its way through, and then if all went well, it would be available July 1st. And I think too, I was just listening to City Council last night, there's revenue shortfalls and whatnot. So as they were discussing that last night, our finance director was giving City Council, like, here are some options to consider. So, you know, it's a fluid process. And we never count, we don't count spending the money until it's all official. July 1st is pretty much the safe route to go, because things can happen along the way. And we know we're in interesting economic times. Yeah, the next process that probably would be of interest to you is the events. And I think one thing I've learned over the last couple of years in particular, I went to an events training conference back when I was the events manager. And because of all the significant liability for putting on events for cities and jurisdictions, there is a lot more limelight on what kind of processes are in play for having events. And so, you know, I know our events manager is now Shannon Mason. She is, you know, putting great protocols together, but just before you even get into those kinds of protocols, there's just a lot of different things that can get triggered with an event request. And the first part is just what permits may be required for that type of an event. And then the second piece is there's usually a review committee by the city's risk manager, the emergency manager, and the police department. And it all depends on, like, are there street closures? What's the size of the event, etc. And this is all, you know, even before the COVID protocols. But now with COVID, there's even more protocols to go through, and those are constantly being updated as those guidelines are refreshed. And then the other element to that is that we have an internal process for our marketing in our city calendar. And I guess the takeaway for you that I would want you to just have a little bit more knowledge about is that it's a really, the marketing team always talks about, especially when it comes to putting a campaign together, you can't have all these different campaigns competing at the same time. So the earlier, the better. We have a shared calendar where we're having the different launches, dates of a campaign, of a project or event. And we know that if we have too many things going on, there's just too much competition for the community's attention. So that's something that the marketing team works on to make sure that timing wise, things are spaced out. The city calendar, we're very intentional about not having multiple items scheduled for the same day. We don't want our community to feel conflicted on where to go, what event to support. So we try to spread all that out throughout the year. And as you know, with a rainy, beautiful Oregon, some of those very popular months tend to be our summer. So if you plan to do something in the summertime, that really should get on the calendar sooner than later, so that you know, you're not competing with any other events. And then lastly, I would just mention we've got all these city guiding documents that we really take seriously. We even include it when we do our budget narratives, and that's the Climate Action Plan, DEI, which you heard from Alexis, and our visioning guidelines. And so taking time to see if there's any alignment with some of those goals that your idea would align well with, that always adds a lot of value to using precious resources to maximize what the city's already making a priority. Those have already been tried and true by city council. They've been blessed. And so when you take the time to kind of carve out, like, this is what matches with the visioning document, this is what matches with the climate action plan or with DEI, those types of connections are really powerful when you can connect those dots, because it's integrated then. And of course, we always have really big key initiatives underway, and just having some alignment with some of those projects or looking for ways to be part of that. And that's just another piece of advice I would recommend, that there's already so much going on. So is there anything that you'd want to be part of that's already underway?
Annie, I just wanted to check in on time and see if you had more, if you wanted, oh, there, perfect questions. I was going to say we have about 5 minutes, so I wanted to give folks a chance to ask you questions if they
yeah. So I'll take this, I'll turn the screen off just so we can see each other. But yeah, so that's sort of, if I were to just tell you a little bit about what, behind the scenes of City Hall and just some of the tried and true best practices for boards and commissions and roles of advisory boards. Those are some of the things I'd share with you if we were having a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and Lanny, I wanted to just make one comment. Lanny and I had a conversation earlier today. We were reading through some of the prior annual reports. And so Lanny mentioned that in the bylaws for the Arts Commission, it has that one of the duties or the privileges of being a commission is an annual report. And when we were looking back on the reports, we recognized that it was super confusing, that the reports that had gone to City Council in the past on behalf of the Arts Commission were really arts program reports. And so we acknowledge that it has been confusing. And so we're all here tonight to try to clarify that, and also, of course, to clarify that in the next half of our retreat.
I know that when I started, there was a BAP, BAC, and BAF. Beaverton Arts Program, Beaverton Arts Commission, Beaverton Arts Foundation. And it was kind of like stepping in mud for a while.
Okay. Any other question for Lanny while she's here? Jane, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. And Lanny, I just want to make sure that I'm reading this right. And if you could explain this to me, I'm looking at the handouts in the binder, and I see that under the events on the pie chart, it says $80,000 for events. And then when I look at the calendar and look at the events, I'm only seeing the BAM and sponsorships. So am I understanding that 80,000 is going to sponsorships, which is it just says chalk art and the BAM? Or is this not completed?
So that budget chart was one that I put together, and I can explain that.
Okay.
So BAM takes about $30,000 to put on. 10 Tiny Dances takes about that same. And this coming year, we submitted for another $20,000 to be able to do event sponsorships, like sponsoring the Chalk Art Festival. We may not spend all of that, but that was proposed in our budget. And we'll also see if we end up getting that, but that's what we got last year.
So 10, because there's nothing under 10 Tiny Dances. So is that happening then?
No, that budget was sort of like a typical year. So I was going to explain that in my presentation, that we are in a little bit of a weird year with COVID, but that's sort of a typical budget.
Okay, sorry, I'll let you present when you have your time then. Thanks.
Yeah, great presentation, Lanny. You answered a lot of my questions, and put up a lot more. Just an observation. It sounded like that the arts program is probably going to take a hit next year in the budget. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
The mayor's program?
No, the budget for the arts program.
Oh, arts program. That I don't know. I don't think that that's been determined yet. I think we're still, I think Beth can speak to where things are at, internal budget review. I think she can speak to where things are at right now with the internal budget review. And that's at least a little bit of an update of where things are at now. I don't know if we'll have more cuts in the May budget committee. Beth, do you want to share, since I'm not familiar where you're at with your budget on that?
Sure. So with the budget process, there is an internal review with the finance department before it goes to the budget committee, and then before it goes to city council. And the only thing that our finance department has suggested is cut from our budget was some funding that I had proposed for another round of COVID relief grants to arts organizations. So at this point, we aren't expecting huge cuts to the arts budget, and there might be minimal cuts, but of course, we also can't predict what the budget committee or council might do. But the arts program budget is such a small part of the overall city budget. I think we're probably going to do okay.
Any more questions for Lanny, and given her role with the boards and commissions expertise and the neighborhood programs? Next up is Beth. So was there any more questions for Lanny? Rebecca?
I had a question. I'm looking through the handout and I'm seeing under the duties under Article 3, under the bylaws, it talks about us providing arts education workshops and training opportunities for local artists and arts stakeholders. I have to say that reading this section was a little shocking to me because I don't think we have ever been independently doing any of these things. And supporting the Beaverton Public Art Plan. Well, we do that with that, but I'm just getting a much different sense of us being more of an independent entity. I've always thought of us as just a team with the arts program staff and not so much as answering directly to City Council. This is kind of a new shift for me. Not sure I really understand that, but.
And I can definitely understand your journey. This board has been through so many different phases. So I think that's part of your history is why, how you've been utilized and how you've operated over the years. That's definitely lended to why some of those questions would definitely be on your mind. And I think going forward, I would recommend, Beth and I were having this conversation of that intentionality of, what's Arts Commission, what's Arts Program, talking about where those pieces intersect. But, really you are an advisory board to City Council, and that's, and there's so many things you do in that already defined just with even just all your grants that you have a huge voice over. That's huge.
Sure. But I've always thought of us as advisory to the arts program, not to City Council.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And so that's kind of odd to me, but I don't know, Jim, I'm one of the old timers around here, if you didn't know. Jim, was that surprising to you, or is that I've been on the left page all the time?
Yeah, not really.
Okay. But that's good to know, think of ourselves as more independent.
Just take it to the top.
Maybe because I'm married to a city councilor, I understood that role.
Okay.
And Rebecca, to your point about the board manual, we are going to have to update that anyway when we do the bylaws update. And Lanny and I were just talking about this today, how reading through it, it is also confusing because, for example, the workshop series is something that I've coordinated with Rosier from TBC and with the staff at Hillsborough. So having that listed as something that the Arts Commission does is confusing.
Yeah, it's like,
it's really
we've never done that.
Exactly. So 100% agree with you, Rebecca. And I think hopefully, by the end of our next retreat session, everyone will have a little bit more clarity, including myself.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Glad to know I just haven't been checked out all these years and didn't have any idea what was going on.
Well, I think that was more a role for council president, or sorry, not council, the chair of the back. So Rosier used to go and help present, but with the liaison assisting. Last year was an anomaly, and I didn't have to do that. I could just tell me, hey, just kidding.
As somebody who has presented in front of City Council before for a different commission, the Arts Commission can do a really bang up job in a much better way and a much more interactive way than some of the other commissions that are out there. We have so much that we can do. And post-COVID, we can do it.
Well, our presentations have been great.
All right, well, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, or just know too, we in the neighborhood office, we have a host of resources available for advisory boards to read. If we have lots of books, we have other tools too. So happy to share at any time. And I'll put my email address in the chat here.
Thank you, Lanny. Great.
Thank you, Lanny.
Thank you, Lanny.
Thank
you.
Hey.
So I have a quick question for you all because, it's things, there was just, we're just a little bit tight on the time, and it was such a tight agenda that I'm hesitant to have Beth launch in and have to shorten her part. So I just want to just sort of get a check from you all whether or not your preference would be to just have any like final questions and wrap up and move Beth's piece so that it's not rushed, or do you want to stay on for an extra few minutes?
I think it's important to hear from Beth.
Okay. So would everybody be okay staying on for an extra 5 minutes or so? Because I think that we need to have at least another 15 minutes so we don't shorten her. I had 5 minutes for closing that I could forego. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to check in with that. Then we'll just go for at least give her that full, she had 15 minutes to give that overview. So let's give you that full 15 minutes, Beth, and then we'll just have a very quick good night to everybody on my end.
All right, can everyone see that? Good, we're good? Okay. All right, I'm gonna give you guys an overview of the City Arts Program. So I wanted to start with just introducing you to the staff. Some of you haven't met the staff. Well, some of you haven't even met me in person. We've just met over Zoom. But this little montage is just some things that are meaningful to our staff. So we have a 3-person team. We like to say that we're small but mighty. And the first staff person is Debbie Thompson. She is really our events planning hero. She is the lead in coordinating the BAM show, which is an incredibly big lift. She's helping me currently with getting a mural matching grant program in place. She's updating the city's website and our arts pages. She's working on an online and smartphone public art walking map. And I'm trying to utilize her more and more to help with public art projects. And so you'll see this as a theme. I wanted that to share like a current passion project that they care about. So she wrote, I was a volunteer victims advocate with the Beaverton Police Department for 6 years, and I am passionate about helping those that need a hand up. The Victim Services Coordinator, Katrina Rodriguez, worked with a domestic violence survivor and commissioned a visual artist to capture her experiences with domestic violence on canvas. Survivorscape includes 6 pieces that tell her story before, during, and after. And so Debbie's really been thrilled to work on that project. This is Courtney Buckner. She is my administrator's hero. She handles a lot of things that I'm glad I don't have to deal with, like purchase orders, vendors, invoices, 1099 forms, room reservations, travel and trainings, ordering supplies, grants program administration, e-news and your city articles, and she also manages the revolving art program at City Hall, or the Beaverton building, as we call it. And her passion project is that she really loves working on the grant programs because she feels that there are so many creative thinkers in our community. So being able to help them bring their dreams and projects to fruition sparks joy. And this is me. I manage all of our 1% for Art projects and any other public art projects that are initiated. I help manage our arts grant program. So Courtney and I work together on that. And of course, work with whoever's on that subcommittee from the Arts Commission to review those. I do serve on some city committees and in tax. I'm currently on the Downtown Loop Technical Advisory Committee and serve on a placemaking committee. I think there's something else I'm forgetting, but you get the idea. I do put together the arts program budget and submit it annually. Of course, I liaise to work with you guys and support you on the Arts Commission. And I work on building relationships with partner organizations and providing technical assistance. So for example, the Downtown Association, I've provided them with some input and some ideas and some help as they've been trying to think about doing murals and sidewalk murals. So it's both a support and kind of a, let me be a resource to you. And my passion really is mural matching grant program. Not only are murals a relatively affordable way to beautify a community or cover up an ugly wall, but they can be an art form that the community can help paint and have ownership in. And that's one of my favorite, that community building element. Although the photo on the right might not be the best representation of that, but we have lots of murals in Beaverton that the community has helped paint. And I also love how murals are a traditional art form in almost every culture. From cave paintings to the present, murals have told the stories that are important to people throughout history. So these are kind of the main buckets that the arts program oversees. We administer the 1% for Art program, and that is, of course, when the city does its own capital improvement projects or other projects, 1% is put aside for art if it meets certain thresholds. So I get contacted by the community development department saying, we're going to do this project, say we're going to do the library fountain project, and we have $30,000 to do art. Let's do something with that money, and I work with them to make that happen. Already mentioned the grants programs, and then the 2 signature events annually, the 10 Tiny Dances and BAM. So this is a slide that talks about kind of the interaction between the arts program manager, me / staff liaisons to the BAC, and how we intersect. So my role is to present public art projects to the BAC for approval, or to coordinate that happening, the artist wants to present, to provide background and context to the commission, to interpret city council, city department, and relevant state and federal laws and policies. I have to follow all city policies and processes and make sure that, anything intersecting with the BAC does as well. Help create a climate of collaboration, transparency, and goodwill. And of course, stay informed about the latest developments in the public art field, or really arts management. So I think this slide might get at a little bit of the comments that have been made tonight. So in 1985, the Beaverton City Council adopted an ordinance which dedicates 1% of the cost for major construction or alteration of certain facilities for the acquisition and display of works of art in or around such facilities. The City of Beaverton Arts Program, formerly known as the Beaverton Arts Commission / BAC, was charged with developing guidelines for the program and as well as administering the program. So it's shifted to now be something that the arts program does in consultation with the Arts Commission. And this is just a definition of what public art is. Essentially, it's anything that's visible from the right of way, if there's an easement, or anything that, of course, is public property. And the one really specific area that our code recognizes the role of the Arts Commission is public art. So the Arts Commission has the final authority on all public art projects. So those come to you, and you have the final authority. There might be, like, say, a contract that has to get approved by City Council. So if we have, for example, a contract with an artist that's over a certain dollar amount, they have to approve that. But the public art itself, you guys get to make the final decision. Now, I know this is really hard to see, and I don't know if I can do that, if that helps at all. So this, like I was saying to Jane earlier, is sort of a representation of a typical year. So this isn't like 100% accurate, but the point of this is to explain that about 60 to 70% of what we work on in the arts program really is administering the 1% for art program, so essentially public art. And I'd be happy to answer more questions about that in the Q&A. Okay, now I can't get this to move forward. And I knew that you guys wouldn't be able to read this on the slide, but this is the arts program work plan. You have an Excel spreadsheet in your binder that kind of laid out the projects that we're working on, kind of high level. So I just wanted to reference that. And I also wanted to just reference 2 projects that are coming to the BAC soon for review. On the left is the rendering of the pump house that's going to be constructed with the renovation of the fountain next to the library. And that I actually had a conversation with the public art subcommittee, I think it was in January, about what do we want to do with this? Do we want to do music? Because the fountain will also have the opportunity to synchronize with music. Do we want to commission music? Do we want to do sculpture? Do we want to do murals? And the PAC thought that that building was a great candidate for some murals, particularly on those panels. So that project will be coming back to the commission in some form or fashion. Certainly any final designs will come back to the BAC, and we can talk about how we want the PAC or the BAC, or do we even need to have a public arts subcommittee? And I think that's going to probably come up in our second part of the retreat and open to ideas. And then on the right is the intersection at Crescent and Hall. And that's of course where people will be entering one of the entrances to the central district where the PRCA is. And community development has asked that we do a call to artists to kind of beautify that intersection and you know, make it signify a gateway that you're entering somewhere that's kind of special. So these were just a few ideas I had off the top of my head, how the BAC can be involved with public art. I think absolutely providing input on overarching themes, reviewing draft RFQs, and maybe that could be a subcommittee, or it doesn't have to be. Review and approve final art projects as presented. Help celebrate and get the word out. And then if the BAC wants a role in the public art dedication events, of course, that's perfectly, that'd be wonderful. And I did include this matrix in your binder. So this was just a capture of, I think, how the BAC and the arts program have intersected. Like I mentioned earlier, 1% for art, absolutely final authority is the commission. Same with public art projects that are not paid for by the 1% for art. But then some of the other areas like events, grants, well, actually no grants. We've always utilized the BAC to review and approve grants. But some of the other areas have been not as much of a direct initial involvement from the BAC, but certainly open to inputting and comments. And that matrix is under your city tab in your binder. So this is just to wet your whistle, get your ideas going. What could the BAC roles be in arts related activities in Beaverton? Well, you absolutely can review any arts policies. And I think that we are going to have a few come your way this year. Art activities at city events. So if you guys want to do an activity at the night market, or I know you guys have done booths at different events, absolutely wonderful. If people want to give a review of our grant processes, particularly that our grants are serving BIPOC and marginalized groups, really open to that input, and that could be a subcommittee. And then Lanny had this idea that we could have a guest column in the e-news or in your city newsletter every month from a different arts commissioner. And I think that would be a great addition if anyone's interested in that. And then really, you know, what are other ideas that you have and what does the BAC really want to take on? So that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
Beth, I think this is really exciting, especially with the prospects ahead. One thing that I was looking at in the binder that I wondered, and it's because I'm a visual slash linear person, the arts program budget as a pie chart did not work for me. And so if there's a way to do like a kind of a graph, and also to go from the you know, percent for the arts was the 500,000, and then go sequentially down from that, where it was really hard to read that and pick out the very slim and colored references.
No problem. I can give you guys an Excel spreadsheet that would have that information. And I did want to just make a note that that 1% for art, that $500,000 that you saw on that pie chart, doesn't technically live in the arts budget. It lives in community development's budget, but we're the ones that administer it. So I included it because I wanted you guys to kind of get a clear picture of how that's a really big focus. But yeah, I hear you. That pie chart was pretty hard to read.
You can probably do that parenthetically though.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So are there any other questions? And I'm sure there's also, this is probably generating a lot of ideas. If you still have any energy left at 8:30, you might be having some ideas based on some of the content that's been shared. But are there other questions or comments for Beth?
I want to thank Beth and our executive, with Allison and Jane. I want to thank all of them for all the work that you put into this. This is great.
I see some cheers and some hands.
Yeah,
Why don't you all
definitely.
unmute for a second?
It's terrific. I think that this should be part of the January orientation for new people and just the general meeting at the first of the year to really explain, all these relationships and everything. So yeah, this is very well done. Thank you so much. I mean, as long as I've been on this thing, and I've learned things tonight. So I'm grateful, very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for joining tonight and going over time, and it was very beneficial. So thank you.
Thanks to everyone for your kind words. We really appreciate that. And I really want to give a shout out to our retreat subcommittee who put in a lot of time and work on this. And the subcommittee again was Jane, Rebecca, Peg, Destry, Brian, and also Sharon. She came to the meetings and collaborated. So thank you to everyone. And also a shout out to the arts program staff who did a lot of the behind the scenes with the binders. And so Beth, please extend our thanks to Debbie and Courtney. And also, big thanks to Lanny as a presenter, also Alexis and Carly. Thank you so much for serving as our facilitator. And,
The pipe.
Thanks to everyone.
Do we need to decide if we're going to have another subcommittee meeting to plan part 2?
So
we definitely need a follow-up.
You want me to just put together a doodle poll?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
That's great. Yeah. And it probably could be a pretty streamlined meeting, given that our last subcommittee meeting, we pretty much just, shifted over that major brainstorming, moving ahead piece. So it probably could be a pretty efficient.
Yeah. You did most of the work. I will offer that if you want for the subcommittee, I have my facilitator agenda from the previous retreat that has a lot of overlap in the kind of structure around like how to structure the goal setting. And I know that this wasn't like very exciting facilitating stuff, like visual for my visual learners out there. Like I know, but the next one I'm hoping we can do some more fun things. Maybe
You're awesome, Carly.
Some Jamboard and some more like interactive and some team building and some more of the fun stuff in the May conversations. So but I'm happy to share that with the subcommittee ahead of time so that you can also see some ideas on like how to think about the that structurally.
Okay, Carly, here's your assignment. You have to come up with an outdoor venue for all of us to get together.
There you go.
That sounds pretty great.
Well, we all get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Really, it's awesome.
Thanks,
Very
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thanks.
Bye.
Night.
Oh, my goodness, that's nice.